Let's continue with making the pirate ship. In the last video, we made the lower floors up to the main deck. In this video, we're going to finish all floors. Oh, and just the floors, not the walls. The walls are coming in the next video. We need to make the captain's room, Sterncastle deck, Forecastle, and Forecastle deck. So here goes. The first thing I noticed is that the tail is too tall. So I cut it a little shorter. Even if I make the main deck a little taller than other floors, it's still too tall. So I readjusted that length. Then I added the flat panel to the end of the tail. This rectangular panel will become the highest rail on the stern. One of the main requirements for this ship is that it is assemblable and interchangeable. So basically, I reuse the main structure of the ship, but swap out different parts to create different ships as I need them. For now, the main look I'm going for is specifically Uma and Hook's pirate ship, but as time goes, I will make more ships to fit the needs. So most things will not be permanently glued. So it does add a little bit more complexity to the design. After that height adjustment, next we need to work on the captain's room, or also known as Sterncastle or officer's quarter. Now this room is a little weird. A part of the room has to be squeezed in between the main deck and the tail panel. And the windows need to stick out even further than the tail panel. It's like the captain wanted a little more extra room, so the renovation happened to the room after the ship's built. For whatever the reason, a lot of these ships have these windows protruding out. And I also want to be able to swap out these rooms later, so I don't want to glue anything permanently. So it's a bit of a trial and error happening for this room. So what I'm making is just the bottom half of the room, and the windows will sit on top of this structure. I will come back and make the windows and rest of the walls later. Today, I only want to make the outlines. But before I make those, I need to start going back and making these ribs a little more smooth. In this case, I'm shaving away the tip of the ribs, so they become little pegs for which the room can be attached to, but not so big that those pegs are sticking out of the room. So these little shaving processes are happening a little bit at a time as I need them. The pegs on both sides are shaved down. This is what will hold the room to the pegs. I will be covering up this with paper and wood later. I'm going to add beams to the bottom and the sides to this piece, so we have something to attach the wall panels. The beams are made with wood sticks. It feels a little flimsy right now, but I think they will feel stronger as the wall panels are added later. The inside is hollowed out because that's where all the captain's stuffs need to go, including his desk and the chairs, and I don't know what else is inside the captain's room. I'm guessing maybe the bed. I'm guessing the captain will not sleep with the rest of the crew, but maybe I'm wrong. Maybe this was just the office and his bedroom is somewhere else. Maybe the captain also did not sleep on a bed. Like the rest of his crew, the captain also slept on a hammock. More research is required. But until then, this area will be empty. So I got curious. No matter which ship you look at, a ship of this size or larger has at least a few things that always appear in the same area. Like the crew's sleeping area is always under the main deck at the middle of the ship, the captain's cabin or the officer's cabin is always at the back, on the highest part of the ship. The officer's room may also appear on the forecastle at the front of the ship. The cargo also always goes on the bottom of the ship. I understand why the cargoes always go to the bottom. They are heavier and they don't need to be accessible all the time. I'm guessing the higher you go, better it is. Maybe you get less seasickness, maybe less motion sickness. The back might be better than the front, which is why the captain always chooses the room on the back, but the higher ranking officers get the forecastle. Not as good as the captain's room, but it's still higher than the crew. Then the crew gets the middle. Not too bad, but not too good. No privacy whatsoever. Everyone just gets a hammock. Next, I'm making the floor for the Sterncastle. This is also sometimes known as the navigational deck. It is the highest floor on the ship. Just about the only thing higher than this floor is the mast and the bird's nest at the top of the mast. Sometimes the ship's steering wheel may appear here, but sometimes they appear on lower decks. I'm going to put the steering wheel on this floor. To secure this floor, I added little sticks to the tail panel so the floor can be inserted or taken out whenever I want to. This floor will be secured more firmly using the ship's walls. Let's move on to the forecastle. I need to shave down some areas a little more, like making the edges of the floors more straight. The ribs need to line up a little more smoothly. After that, let's talk about the forecastle. Some ships have a room here, some ships just have a raised quarterdeck. Some ships, especially larger ones, don't have an extra room on the forecastle. In our case, this area will look half raised from the main deck, but it looks like a room from the front. But this room will not be accessible. The cameras don't need to go in here, so I'm not going to bother trying to make this area look like a room. The bowsprit will be sticking out of this room, so trying to make a room out of this area will be extremely difficult. In very large ships, I think the crew gets a little more space, but these galleons are smaller. So literally, like you're sleeping with cannons on your head and another one on your feet. I might just go crazy from claustrophobia. The walls of the forecastle is rounded, so I saw other people bending their wood and doing all sorts of stuff to make them bend, like soaking in water and then heating them up. But I figured I will just go and get some thinner wood. So I took a trip to the closest hardware store and I found some veneer. It's a very thin slice of wood. It's so thin, in fact, they like literally crumble and rip when I touch them. I got some wood stain while I was there too. I didn't know which color to get, so I got mahogany. When I tested them on these wood, it came out dark. Like really darker than the color shown on the can. I think I will keep this color and use them for accentuating like rails and doors and such, but covering the entire ship with that color might make the ship too dark. I think I want to go back one of these days and get lighter color. I tested acrylic paint, but it's opaque. It covered up the wood grains too much. Wood stains are transparent, so I'm definitely going to stick with wood stains for covering larger areas, I will use acrylic paint for painting smaller areas or areas that don't need to look like wood. So there's the difference between wood stain and paint. So to make the floor of the forecastle, I attached wider wood sticks together and then cut into a half rounded shape so it matches the shape of the front of the main deck. Next, we need to cover the front as well. I made a panel that's big enough to cover up the area all the way from the lower deck to the top of the forecastle. It has to be tall enough to look like a room. A door will appear here. Again, I glued together wider wood sticks together to form a panel and then cut into a U shape. Then it was slided in between the forecastle and the floors. The wall is standing with just the tension created between the panels. I will glue it to the forecastle later, but not until I make the bowsprit and the door on this panel. So right now a gap appears, but it will disappear in the final product. Working on a flat surface is easier than a vertical space that's attached to a ship, so I'm trying not to glue anything until the very end. Again, I'm shaving off any areas that are sticking out. We cut down the height of the tail, so we also need to cut down the height of the forepeak, or just beak. This is basically where the figurehead will be attached. Right now the forepeak is too high, so it gets in the way of the bowsprit. There is a very narrow floor here, and depending on the ship, this area can have a floor. Some just have planks with like holes. Some are just covered with net. So what I'm going to do is make a very narrow floor so you don't fall off the ship when you open the door. But after that, I'm going to cover up this area with a net. So you might want to be careful when you walk around this area. I still haven't decided on what I want to make for the figurehead. It's a pirate ship, so naturally a skeleton would be appropriate. Captain Hook's ship seems to have a mermaid. Descendant also had a mermaid. The pirate ship looks a little unfinished in the movie, but I think the figurehead looks a lot like a mermaid. But I don't want a mermaid or a skeleton or, of course, another most often used figurehead, an angel. No, they all just seem so cliche. I want to make something else, but I can't figure out what. I was thinking like a giant octopus might be interesting, since it's Uma's ship, but that might be extremely difficult or just weird. So if you have any idea for the figurehead, let me know. Not an angel, not a mermaid, not skeletons, anything else? Next, I'm covering up the forecastle, the back and two sides. I used the craft stick to cover up the back, but I used the veneers for the sides. I glued the wood to papers for extra reinforcement. That way, the wood wouldn't snap into two pieces or just rip. There will be two staircases on either end, so the sailors can climb on board the forecastle. But anyway, those little details will be worked on later. We're still trying to get the main structures built. Anyway, these gluing tasks take a long time, but it doesn't look like much was done. You know, woodworking is like 50% measuring and cutting and 50% waiting for glue to dry. There is nothing worse than working with half-dried wood pieces that fall apart while I'm working on the next step. So it's quite a time-consuming process. these veneers are so fragile that extra reinforcement is kind of a requirement. They could rip while I'm just cutting. They eventually ripped even with paper backings, but at least they were in one piece. I want to use these veneers to cover up the entire hull of the ship. It's going to get pretty complicated, so I'm going to leave the covering up of the hull to the next video. And then finally, I covered up this base structure of the captain's room with paper, so at least it's got some coverings. This room needs a complete rethink. We know how high the ship is and where all the rooms are. Now we can figure out how high the mast needs to go. At first I thought maybe the ship was too small, but no, I think this ship will get big. I can already just barely fit my ship inside the camera. If I add the bowsprit, this ship will not be able to fit inside from this camera distance. So there are still two big structural issues left, the wall and the mast. After that, we can get into itty bitty little details. In the next video, we will tackle the walls. Thanks for watching!